To understand the heavily armed and militaristic Starfleet that emerged after the Dominion War, an analysis of the Federation's foolish Golden Age that precipitated the war must be fully understood. Ironically, this Golden Age, time of pacifism really, came at the price of blood. Lots and lots of blood. From its very formation in 2161, the Federation endured continued tensions, Starfleet either being on the brink of, or actually in, some type of war. The conflicts would continue to threaten the very existence of the United Federation of Planets until after the Tomed incident of 2311, after which the Federation would prosper and expand in all directions for nearly 60 years. In short, the Federation started out being a war-weary power and stepped into a golden age. And all it really cost was 150 years of near war or constant war, massive expansion once the Federation was unopposed, and ultimately nearly losing everything due to hubris. Contrary to popular belief and dialogue found in The Next Generation, the first 150 years of the Federation was mostly strife and near constant need for battle readiness. We know this because the formation of the Federation occurred after a combined United Earth, Vulcan, Andorian, and Tellarite task force defeated the Romulan Star Empire's assets at the Battle of Chiron, ending the United Earth-Romulan War. After the Federation's establishment, Starfleet, the defensive and scientific arm of the Federation, found itself in a constant state of battle readiness. This was to combat the most well-known adversary of the Federation in the 22nd century, the Klingon Empire. In fact, there wouldn't be a time in the 23rd century that the Klingon Empire and United Federation of Planets weren't in some form of war or Cold War status. Many brush fires would flare up during this century, resulting in battles between Starfleet and the Klingon Defense Force, including but not limited to the Battle of Donatu 5. At some point, internal struggles within the Klingon Empire caused its infrastructure to fracture, giving a bit of respite to Starfleet forces. This brief break would only last for a scant 11 years, however, when the Klingon Empire's houses united under a Klingon named T'Kuvma, and a Klingon task force devastated a Starfleet defense force at the Battle of the Binary Stars. The ensuing war lasted for almost a year, and an excess of well over 21,000 Federation citizens would lose their lives. 1/3 of Starfleet's forces would be destroyed, and Starfleet would be pushed all the way back to Earth. The war ultimately ended in a ceasefire, neither side actually claiming victory. The conflict created deep divides and resentment between the Federation and Klingon Empire, plunging both sides back into the Cold War that had existed before. Starfleet spent most of the century rebuilding its fleet strength and once again began exploring, though in the opposite direction of the Klingons. Even with Starfleet expanding, again away from the Klingons, there would still be some issues, including a brief battle with the Romulans during the Neutral Zone incident, an encounter with an entity known as V'ger, which almost devastated Earth, and the near destruction of Earth by a Well probe. The beginning of the end of the bloody conflicts that stained the 23rd century began in about 2293 with the Khitomer Accords. This would mark the end of the Klingon Cold War and allow for a scaling back of the military arm of Starfleet. Though tensions would rise briefly, the Klingons ultimately cut most all ties with the Romulan Star Empire in 2344 after the crew of the Enterprise C gave their lives defending a Klingon outpost. With the Klingons, the largest threat to the Federation, pacified, and basically becoming an ally, Starfleet would still have intermittent confrontations with the Romulan Star Empire, the Empire being the only other major power of the time, at least as far as was known. However, these conflicts ended at the Tomed incident and the signing of the Treaty of Algeron, leading to the Golden Age, which we'll discuss after this. After the Tomed incident in 2311, the Federation, and indeed Starfleet itself, saw massive expansion in both territory and the sciences. This period of time has been coined, as I've stated, as the Golden Age. Full credit going to the YouTuber Lore Runner. I've personally called this same time the Age of Pacifism, as Starfleet massively scaled down its ability to conduct war and opted to acquiesce rather than engage in prolonged conflicts. The Federation also finally began to have enough political weight to solve problems diplomatically. There would be less and less a need for large-scale ship engagements. Hell, even starships began to reflect this change as policy moved away from all military personnel on a ship reminiscent of the United States' 1960s tradition to more of an amalgamation of the early UK's 12th century naval doctrine intermixed with progressive ideals allowing for a civilian presence. Vessels would be outfitted with the ability to defend itself and other colonies, true, but also had a main focus on exploration and family. The ships of the early 24th century would be basically palaces, grand cities in space. 24th century ships would have holodecks, aquariums, gymnasiums, luxury areas, schools, advanced medical facilities, and more. Even areas off limits to civilian personnel would have a very homey and comfortable feel. These shifts in aesthetic and policies had dramatic impacts on those who worked within Starfleet as well. Starfleet personnel became more complacent, thinking they were more explorers than soldiers. Hell, the captain of the flagship of Starfleet would be quoted as saying, "Starfleet is not a military organization. Our purpose is exploration." This mentality would be seen reflected in the entirety of the crew of the Enterprise D, Starfleet Command, and even other ships. The conversion would not only be in Starfleet, but the Federation itself. For humanity, and probably most all of the Federation, currency would become largely antiquated. This due to innovations such as the replicator, holodecks, and other amenities. Citizens could do anything they wanted, be able to chase their dreams. Advances in medical science would mean that most species would live longer and overall were more healthy. With all of their base needs met, some children would grow up in a universe where they were only bound by their imagination. And this, understandably, would lead to complacency. Starfleet becoming so pacifistic that even scientists were allowed to go and research organisms like the Borg that are rumored to be one of the most fierce enemies of the Federation. They thought they were unbeatable. However, while the quote-unquote Golden Age lasted roughly 50 to 60 years, cracks would start to be seen even within that time. Starfleet Command would slowly become aware of dangers on the horizon. The Cardassian border wars, renewed interest from the Romulan Star Empire, the Federation's Enkethi War, an attempted coup at Starfleet Command by bug-like entities, and Klingon internal issues that threatened the Federation-Klingon alliance all were warning signs. However, even with all of this, the Golden Age wouldn't be interrupted, at least until it came crashing down when the Federation was plunged into yet another war. This war being started by the Borg, who invaded their territory. To give real scope here, during the Federation-Klingon War of 2267, the Neutral Zone Incursion, and even the Tomed Incident, Starfleet fielded starships built specifically for the purpose of defending the Federation. The Constitution, Miranda, Excelsior, and Ambassador-class starships were a part of many in the front line in the 23rd and early 24th century. Yes, these ships did have exploratory missions as well, but they were built with the mind that the universe is dangerous out there. And this would be a sad irony because at the Battle of Wolf 359 in 2366, the Federation would defend itself with a task force that was laughable at best. While the fleet that was meant to stop the Borg Cube would have Nebula-class starships and a few other modern vessels, the bulk of the fleet was designed during the 23rd century, and many of those wouldn't even be able to defend themselves against other 23rd century vessels. In one battle, Starfleet lost over 11,000 personnel, all of them either KIA, MIA, or assimilated. It was a near miracle that the Borg vessel was stopped and Earth not assimilated in the end. After the Borg incursion, Starfleet did wake up, if but for a brief moment. They began to make vessels geared to defeat the Borg, ones geared for war. Unfortunately, old habits would die hard. Even with the culture of Starfleet starting to change back to what it was, those personnel within it would not truly understand the role of Starfleet until a brutal war with the Klingons and ultimately the Dominion War itself. It is often stated that actions done in the present have devastating impacts in the future. This can surely be proven true with what we've seen happen with the Federation. The scaling down of the military aspects of Starfleet after the ceasefire and alliance with the Klingons would lead to a golden age where Starfleet thought itself only meant for exploration. And even after the wake-up call of Wolf 359, Starfleet would not understand what it was to be a military power until halfway through the Dominion War. Stay tuned as we continue to discuss Starfleet's pacifism in the Golden Age with a breakdown of the Cardassian Wars.